Finley Sinclair, a young violinist who appears confident, fails the audition at the renowned music institution in Manhattan from the New York Music Conservatory. Her mother embraces her and tries to console her as she looks at her sorrowful face, after she returns home and realizes what occurred. In the upcoming fall, Finley plans to give her final audition her all, and her mother encourages her to do so. Finley's mother tells her to switch up the environment to lift her mood. Finley decides to register in the identical course that her deceased brother Alex took, the semester abroad program in Ireland. The following week, Finley purchases a ticket to Ireland. When she boards the aircraft, just as she was about to place her violin in the hand luggage compartment, an air hostess asks her if she would like to move to a first-class seat since there is an extra seat opened up. Finley smiled and nodded her head. As she moved towards the first-class seat, the hostess directs her to a seat and assists her in finding it. A man is already seated on the window side, so Finley takes the other seat. The same flight attendant brings her a magazine to read during her downtime once she settles into her seat. She realizes that the new movie poster for a number of well-known actors is displayed on the front page. After some while, Finley unintentionally snoozes on the man's shoulder next to her. Gemma, the flight attendant, instructed the man sitting next to Finley to rouse her up and remind her to fasten her seatbelt after she, who was scanning the other passengers, discovered that Finley had not buckled up. As the smiling flight attendant departs, the man nods. Finley is softly roused from sleep by the man's remarks that he doesn't mind a stunning woman peacefully drooling on his shoulder. He does this without moving a muscle. When Finley hears this, she wakes up and uses the back of her hand to wipe her lips. He goes on to remark that she has to fasten her seatbelt and that her snores are adorable. She begins to apologize to the man as she buckles her seatbelt, surprised by her own behavior, and later apologizes and thanks him again. She suddenly realized that the man was the same person from the magazine's cover and was Beckett Rush, a well-known movie star, and the lead in a series of fantasy dragon movies. In disbelief, Finley yells out his name as Beckett calms her down and tells her not to scream. As astonished as she was to realize it, she didn't like the superstar's friendly demeanor. He talks as if Finley was one of his insane followers and organized the entire thing. He says that maybe it was a plan to make the hostess place Finley's seat next to his so that she may get an autograph and take a selfie with him after landing. But Beckett wanted her to stay put for the moment just so they don't draw any attention to themselves. Finley claims that she dislikes celebrities who live in a bubble and understands his type. The type that confuses arrogance with confidence. She feels restrained with him. Since she already knows Beck, he asks her for her name during the chat. After she identifies herself, he asks her once more what she plans to accomplish in Ireland. She responds with a smile, adding that she plans to study abroad for a semester as her older brother did and that she hopes it would transform her life as well. She agrees and replies that life may be difficult, unlike those like him who live in a bubble. As interested as Beck is, he asks if she has any life troubles. When Beck discloses that this is his fourth trip to Ireland for the shooting, they begin to discuss Irish town life. Later, Finley tries to pass the time by reading the magazine, but Beck was equally focused on the papers, so Finley kept turning the pages. Unexpectedly, one of the upsetting pieces with Beck's personal photos in it arrives. Beck murmurs that he too doesn't like the piece as Finley's eyebrows quiver. Beck sits still during the entire trip as Finley shuts the magazine and leans back in her seat. The following morning, when the flight from New York to Ireland lands, Finley takes her baggage and wanders the airport in search of her family and her host, the Callahan family. She turns around when she hears loud yells coming from behind her and sees Beckett's followers swarming around him, begging for photographs and autographs. As she sighs hard and searches in front of her for her family, a girl suddenly runs towards her, leaps on her, and calls Finley's name as she fiercely embraces and kisses her cheeks. Finley wonders if she is Emma Callahan as she embraces her and smiles in surprise. Finley and Emma were sisters for 4 months, according to Emma, who also stated that Finley is exactly as she appeared in the photo. As Finley carefully sets Emma down, she remarks that it was wonderful meeting her. As she clutches Finley's violin set box and tries to open it, Emma continues by mentioning that movie superstar Beckett is at the same airport as them and asks if Finley loves him too. Finley begins to panic. As Finley calmly tries to grab the box from Emma and declares that she is not a big fan of arrogant people, Emma exclaims loudly and joyfully that she is a big fan of his. Emma's parents enter the space from behind and give Finley a bear embrace as the two girls continue talking. Nora claims that they adored her brother and considered him to be a member of the family, and Sean concurs. Nora, who is beaming broadly, continues by saying that they recently inherited a bed and breakfast. Sean, her husband, has since left the military, and they are managing it together and figuring it out as Sean displays his damaged hands. They later take her to the lodge where Alex had stayed while touring Ireland. Finley takes in the magnificent Irish streets as she travels from the airport to the lodger. When they get to the lodger, Emma beckons Finley inside and informs her that she will show him around later but first needs to see her room. As they ascend, Emma reveals that she was granted the room with the best view of the outside and adds that her grandmother used to reside in that room before passing away there. Later, she notes that because Emma's room is next to Finley's, she can depend on her if she needs assistance or just someone to talk to. Emma is told to leave the room by Nora, who also reminds her that she has college orientation the following day, and that Finley needs to relax. Finley is left alone when Emma and her mother storm out of the room. The following morning, as everyone welcomed Finley, Nora and Sean were busy putting breakfast on the table for their new visitor, who was standing at the kitchen door. When her mother calls her name and prevents her from entering the dining room, Emma, who is blissfully enjoying her breakfast and trying to fix her ponytail, approaches the room. According to Nora, Emma engaged the visitor in a 30-minute conversation on her collection of earthworms the previous time. While chatting, Nora turns around and accidentally bumps into Sean, spilling the entire jar of cranberry juice all over him. Sean claims that the meal he prepared is growing cold and that they cannot afford to serve it while it is a complete mess, let alone risk receiving a bad review. Then Finley agrees as she collects the platter and heads inside after Nora asks to serve the ready, warm breakfast to the guest. As she is going to serve him his breakfast, she notices a man seated on one of the dining room chairs. The man then startles Finley by turning around. She asks him what he is doing here, and when she realizes it is superstar Beckett, her eyes widen. Beck teases Finley by saying that he is the lodger's guest and by asking if she is stalking him. Finley says that she is living in one of these rooms and that she expected him to be in one of the luxurious hotels. Beck responds as politely as he can that the lodger they are staying at is luxurious and posh. Then Finley tries to leave as Beck says he hopes she won't sneak into his room if she has the chance. Finley responds inadvertently by saying she won't, even if the visitor annoys her. After she eventually excuses herself and departs from Beck alone, Beck intentionally pronounces her name incorrectly before walking away. When Emma unexpectedly appears from behind and hears Finley ask Nora what Beck was doing in their dining room, she is in wonder and cannot believe what Finley just said. Beck then emerges from the dining room to grab some jam, and Emma drops her lunchbox in shock and begins to behave awkwardly. As soon as Beck departs, Emma begins to sob strangely. Nora grips her shoulders and tells her not to tell anybody about this, since they are trying to keep him out of the media. They cannot afford to get a poor review from a celebrity from another country. Emma argues that the information will be quickly spread across the town, but Nora counters that as long as they keep quiet, nobody will find out. Later at school, Emma and Finley are sitting by the corner of the hockey playground, when Emma's friend Orla enters and says that nearly the entire town knows about Beck staying at their lodger. The conversation turns to a dancing festival that the Irish people hold once a year in the autumn, where their parents fall in love and every year a guy is supposed to ask a girl out for a dance. While Emma expresses her frustration, the conversation shifts to the dancing festival. Finley speculates that perhaps this will be Emma's year, but Emma maintains a detached demeanor as she dismisses the possibility by claiming that Beckett is not her type. The next day, Beckett is on set filming his scene, where the female lead must be taken far away to protect her from the dragons and enemies. As they continue to run, a massive dragon suddenly shows up in front of them. Beck and Taylor are getting ready to fight the dragon when the director abruptly says, "Cut," and he is pulled away from the crew and questioned about why he deviated from the script. Beck claims he wanted to try something different. The director jokingly threatens Beck that if he doesn't improve, he might as well have to assassinate Beck's character in the movie. The director has stated that he will pay Beckett his appropriate compensation, and Beck should take care to avoid making any mistakes, warns Beckett's cunning father Montgomery, who was observing everything. Beckett could only barely agree with his father and replay the scene. He asks for some distance from him, because he needs to clear his head. Montgomery then leaves Beckett to fend for himself. The next evening, as Finley is getting ready to practice her violin in her room, Nora knocks on the door and apologizes for not being able to help her tour the tourist attractions, because she and Sean would be too busy taking care of the B&B due to a few circumstances. Nora then mentions that a few weeks prior, while cleaning the room, she had discovered Alex's journal and hoped that it might be useful for Finley's tour. They later share some emotional interactions while recalling the late Alex and how much he cherished his time in Ireland. Finley is scanning the journal when she comes to the last page and notices a cross-drawing, and the figure's title under it has her name written. As she tries to interpret the art, she becomes perplexed. The following day, Emma brings Finley to a cemetery in an attempt to locate the cross that her brother had drawn, but she comes away empty-handed. The following evening, Finley struggles to concentrate on her violin practice and is about to forego it when she hears a knock at her door. She assumes it might be Nora, but is astonished to see Beck standing on the other side of the door. Beck approaches Finley for assistance with his lines, and Finley promptly rejects him. Beck teases her by mispronouncing her name once more, setting Finley off. Beckett eventually says that things on set have been pretty difficult for him and that he needs to gather himself and reform his lines and emotions after failing to persuade Finley. Beck lets himself in when he notices a diary on her bed. Finley tries to stop him but fails. As he tries to look in the book, Finley finally says that the last sketch is confusing her, and she doesn't understand why her brother would put her name at the bottom. When Beck learns that her brother has passed away, he unintentionally instructs her to text him. but then as soon as he does, he becomes immediately guilty. Suddenly, Finley offers to assist Beck with his lines, and as they begin, she starts to giggle at the words and Beck's delivery of them. Later, after he has calmed down, he begins acting by putting all of his emotion into the lines. Unexpectedly, it improves and assists Beckett in gathering himself. Finley is tasked with caring for an elderly person in the interim as part of her Irish studies classes. When she arrives at the nursing home, she meets Kathleen Sweeney, an elderly woman who is irritable. Finley tries to acquire a new assignment but is regrettably left with the cranky witch. The following day, Finley visits the nursing room and tries to read a Jane Austen novel while remaining seated in front of Kathleen. When Kathleen begins to scream, Finley is forced to leave. But her nurse is amazed by Finley's persistence and allows her to stay for as long as she likes. One day, Finley is exploring the cemetery by herself when Beckett approaches her. He proposes that if she could help him with his lines, he would be her tour guide. Beckett had previously mentioned in front of the Calligans that after he started to practice with Finley, his director gave him high praise, so he seized the chance while she had no one to act as her guide. Finally, he is successful in persuading her and escorting her to the breathtaking cliffs of Moher in Ireland, a region known for its rich greenery. They take a tour of the area before relaxing and having a lengthy talk about life while they sit down. Finley learns that Beck's filming life prevented him from finishing college. The following week, Beck extends an invitation to Finley to visit his filming location so she can see Taylor and meet Beck's father, who is having an awkward talk with his son in front of Finley. Kathleen becomes upset with Finley for sneaking onto her drawers while they talk about Kathleen's letter. Finley asks Beckett to come to the nursing home. Beck shows in at that precise moment, chats with Kathleen, and brightens the atmosphere. He is a very good boy, Kathleen remarks when he departs. Later, while doing her grocery shopping, Finley questions Nora about Kathleen and how she learned about her background. There is a widespread rumor throughout the town that she stole her sister's fiancé before divorcing him after a while. He drank booze nonstop until he passed away because he was so depressed about it. Finley, however, had a hard time accepting it. The next evening, while she is still having trouble with her thoughts, Beck comes to her door and persuades her to join him on a nighttime walk. Finley had anticipated him to take her to a nightclub or pub, and she was right. It is the pub where Molly worked, who she had met a few days earlier while out with Emma. The town's drunkard violinist Seamus, who has been written off by most people but is seeking to prove his value once more, is introduced to Finley by Beck there. When Beck wakes him up and asks for a song, he is once more dozing off on the free bench at the bar. Utilizing this, Beck asks Seamus to approach Finley and showcase her abilities. She is given direction by Seamus, who also advises her to express her enthusiasm for the violin. Everyone in the pub is supportive of Finley as she is finally able to enjoy playing violin for the first time without worrying. Beck eventually asks Finley to dance, and as they converse, they have a little intimate moment. Emma watches them through her room window when they return to the lodger and realizes what is going on between them. Despite their best efforts to keep it a secret, the Callaghan family learns about their kiss and decides to stay cautious. The days pass as Beck gives Finley a tour of Ireland while doing well in his sets and having a great time with the Callaghans, while Finley is taking violin lessons from Seamus. Beck arranges a date for Finley one day, and the two of them visit the venue where Finley originally met Taylor. While having fun fooling around with stunt harnesses on the set, Beckett's two female buddies organize food and decorate the area for them. Additionally, his father advises him to start signing up for the numerous contract offers he is currently receiving. Up until his father disclosed a negative article about him, Beck was doing well on the set of his movie and was getting lots of compliments from everyone. Finley visits the nursing home the next day and talks to Kathleen about how her days went on, when she was told to bring her violin because she would like to hear her play. After some time, Finley inquires about the incident and Kathleen's sister. Finley attempts to persuade her that she doesn't truly believe that narrative and wants to hear the truth from her. As she commands Finley to mind her own business, Kathleen is both apprehensive and incensed. Kath offers Finley a piece of paper and informs her that she has bone cancer, and that she only has a limited amount of time left to live. Soon after Finley arrives at Beck's set to assist him with his lines, Beck receives a call to report to the set as his father walks in. He agrees when Finley states that she has an emergency involving Kathleen and departs. Finley realizes that Beckett is controlling his life. Beckett's father seizes the opportunity when he sees Finley alone and tries to caution her to maintain a professional relationship. Finley exits the scene and immediately approaches Seamus to discuss Kathleen. He says the same thing as everyone else, but he adds that he has certain reservations and finds it difficult to make some connections. He would like to go in search of Fiona, Kathleen's biological younger sister, with her. Even though Finley had stated Kath was dying, she shuts the door in Fiona's face when she approaches her and introduces herself as her sister's friend. Finley confides her distress to Beckett. The two are trying to come up with a solution when Taylor enters, hugs Beck from behind, and displays a photo from when he was 15 years old. She attempts to irritate Finley. The following day, when Beck is trying to convince Finley that there is nothing standing between them while they are out jogging, a car pulls up, and several females get out and start taking pictures with him. Beck, however, persuades her to be his prom for the Irish autumn prom night, and urges her to do so. The local folk dance, and the night passes without incident. Finley is invited to join Seamus in playing the violin with him, to further enhance the beauty of the evening. In the meantime, Beck asks Emma to dance, which shocks Emma, but she eventually accepts his offer as they enjoy their dance. After Finley performs, they dance and have a little private moment. When Finley tells Beck about how her brother passed away after returning from Ireland, the couple is sitting on a bench by the lake admiring the nighttime scenery of Ireland. The following evening when they return to the lodging, they are astonished to see Taylor and Beck's father waiting for them. While those two attempt to manipulate and exert pressure on Beck, who is attempting to protect Finley, takes a step back and admits that she really doesn't comprehend him as well as Taylor does. Finley leaves him on his own, feeling embarrassed and enraged. The following week, Beck approaches Finley via Seamus, and they get into a brief dispute during which Finley asserts that she is unable to lead a dual life like him. Beck, who feels utterly helpless, is unable to say anything and lets Finley depart. Finley sobs next to Emma that night, and Emma remarks that Finley was likely the first and only girl to make Beckett rush whimper. The following day, Finley visits Kathleen and explains that she came to Ireland in order to understand the greater significance of how nothing goes as planned or as expected. Kathleen is astonished by this statement and extends her hand to invite Finley over. She is honest with her about the incident, revealing that her father had a sizable debt. He arranged Fiona's marriage to the wealthy Charles Sweeney in order to keep their home. She says that in their time, family name was everything, and their family name was quite important in town. However, Kathleen married Charles despite his physical abuse of her sister in order to protect her. Even though she left him when she had the chance, he was already an alcoholic. Therefore, Kathleen had little influence on how he died. Finley goes to Fiona after learning all of this, but because it is raining, she is unable to ride her bike up the hills and has to phone Beck instead. They are straightforward with her and let her know that Kat's final wish is for her to grant her forgiveness. Later, Beckett confronts his father and tells him he would take one final movie for the next 6 months to help the team, and ends all his possible connection with Taylor. Following that, Beckett will indeed enroll in college and have a self-determined existence. His actions repaired his relationship with Finley. One day, Beck tells Finley where the cross Alex drew in his book is, and guides her there. Finley is inspired to perform her best at the last New York Music Conservatory audition. When Finley learns that Kathleen's condition is getting worse, she is about to go to New York. She immediately goes to the elderly woman instead of the audition, out of empathy. Fiona makes a last-minute decision to see her sister at the nursing home, carrying out her final wish. The two sisters love one another, and Fiona has sympathy for Kathleen. Kathleen passes away quietly. With the aid of Fiona, who, shockingly, has a connection to the New York Music Conservatory, the institution grants Finley admission, even after the deadline. She gives her best at her violin audition, remembering the delicate experiences she had lived throughout her trip to Ireland. Finley is given the opportunity to play violin in the Autumn Conservatory, and Beck begins to lead a normal life.